Hi everybody, this is Jane from Willow Blue Vintage, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make this patchwork quilt tag. So the thinking behind this was that I always have lots of pieces of paper left over from different projects, like scraps like this, and it always seems a shame to throw them away. I often keep them and use bits of them in future projects, but I wanted to find a way of using those in a tag. So in the same way that people used to use old fabrics from clothes to make patchwork quilts, I've used some of the old papers that I've got and cut out these hexagons and made a patchwork quilt of those. So all of the papers that I've used on this were ones that I'd got left over from other projects. So when you, if you choose to make one, I'd recommend that you do the same. Try and use up things that you've already got. So the back here was this, I think it was the French Attic ephemera, but these are all different bundles that I've used. So have a look through your stash and see what you've got lying around that you could use. So the materials that you're going to need, first of all, your pieces of paper. So these are some papers that I printed out for another project and haven't used. So I was looking for ones that had a sort of similar colour palette, so I'm going to use some of this pale blue, probably some of these blue and white bits, some of these pastel colours, the neutral colours. So choose your papers. You'll need a piece of card cut out into a tag shape. You'll need a hole punch for putting your hole in the tag, and some string or wool or cord, whatever you want to put through your tag. And you'll need scissors for cutting out the tag, and I've got some smaller ones for cutting out the hexagons as well. You'll need some glue and a glue brush. I'm using Mod Podge, but use whatever you prefer. And for making the hexagons, I've got a piece of card, a set of compasses and a ruler. I'm going to show you how to draw a hexagon and make the template, but if you don't feel comfortable about that, you can look online and just put into Google hexagon templates, and there's lots available that you could print off. And then for the stitching, I've got sewing needle, I've got a variety of threads. I'm probably going to use some of these sort of colours, but use whatever colours you like. And it can be any sort of thread really. This is embroidery silk, but you could use any thread that you've got. And for pushing the holes through the paper, I've got this sort of piece of foam that I'm going to be pushing into. So any soft surface would be fine, piece of cloth, a towel, anything like that would do. And some sticky tape for attaching the back of the threads at the back of the card. Okay, let's get started. So we're going to make the hexagon template. So if you take your piece of card and set your compass to about, sorry, wrong side, about 1/2 inch, which in metric is about 13 millimeters. And first thing you're going to do is draw a circle. And then be careful not to alter the distance on your compass, and put your compass point into any point on the outside of your circle, so it's going into the circumference of your circle, and then just make a mark either side where your compass was. And then you're going to move your point of your compass to one of those points where you've crossed the circumference, and do the same again, so make a mark either side, and then move down again to the centre of where one of the lines crosses and make another mark, and the same again. So if I just test it, this one should now cross the one where I started. Okay, so now you've got those arcs drawn crossing the circumference. We're going to join those up. I should have said use a pencil. You could use the one in your compass, but I've got another one which is going to make it a bit easier for me. So as accurately as possible, I'm going to join these marks on the circumference and draw a line. Okay, so now we've got our hexagon drawn, and I'm just going to cut it out. Okay, so there's our hexagon template. The next thing I'm going to do is cover one side of my tag with a section of this print. So I'd like to have a fair bit of the writing on it, so I'm going to place it about there. And then just quickly draw around it. And then I'm going to cut that out, and I'm going to cut it out about ½ an inch larger than the line that I've drawn. So now I'm going to put some glue on one side of my tag. And then I'm just going to turn that over and press it sort of centrally onto the paper. Let's give it a good smooth down. And then I'm going to fold the edges over all around the side of the tag. Okay, and then just open it out, and I'm going to snip off at the corners so that I can fold those edges over neatly and glue them down. So I'm just like making little V's at all of the corners. And then just a quick layer of glue around all of those edges. The reason I wanted it to overlap is that I like the edges to be completely encased in the paper. So then just press those down. Okay, so that's the front of the tag covered with the base paper. So next we're going to cut out our hexagons that are going to go onto the front of the tag. So I've got my hexagon template, and I'm going to look at my prints and just decide where I want to cut it out. So on this one I quite like to get a bit of these different colours, so I'm going to place it kind of crossing over all of those and draw around it, and then I'm just going to come to repeat this on various different parts of my print, and I'm going to cut out 10 hexagons initially and lay those out and see whether I'm happy with the layout. So that's one. I have a bit of this green, probably with a little bit of writing, and it looks interesting if you've got, you know, sort of abstracted bits of writing. So let's try that. Okay, so there's another. So I'm going to carry on, and I'm going to do 10 of those, and then we'll cut them out. So I've cut out all of my hexagons, and as you can see I've got a sort of variety of colours. So they're all in the greens and blues and sort of neutral palette, but I've got a variety so that I don't have any two the same next to each other. So now I'm going to just work out where to position them. So they're going to be coming across this side of the tag. So if I start about there, I can then sort of connect the others, if you like. So they're going flat side to flat side like that, but I'm leaving a gap of I don't know, about 2mm, something like that. So I'm just going to lay them out roughly first of all. Okay, so that's my first sort of go at laying it out, but I can see that I've got two the same together there. So I'm just going to sort of rearrange them a bit until I come up with an arrangement that I'm happy with. So I've come up with an arrangement where I haven't got any next to each other that are the same pattern or colour. And you'll see I've got a few that are sticking over the edges and a few blank spaces. So once I've glued these down, I'll be cutting off the excess bits, and the other end of that one can sort of go to fill in one of these gaps. So I'm going to start just gluing them down now. So if I start with this central one, and I'm going to do the same and just continue doing the same and getting all of these stuck down onto the base of the tag. So when I'm sticking them down, I'm trying to make sure that the gap between them is all about the same. So I'm going to carry on doing that, and then we'll have a look at how we do the stitching. So I've got my hexagons all stuck on, and you can see quite a few of them are sticking off the edge. So I'm going to trim those off, and then with some of the offcuts I'm going to just fill in some of these gaps. So it's easiest if you do it from the back. Okay, so that's them all trimmed off. So I want a piece to fill in this gap here. So I don't want it to be one of the blues or one of those turquoise and cream. So either this green one or this sort of multicoloured one. Let's see what the green looks like in there. Yeah, I think that looks nice. So just stick that in there. And another bit down there. So I could use another fragment of this turquoise. Trying to work out which angle, right, that's it. And then again just trim off the excess. Okay, so that's our card covered. Actually, I could just put another tiny bit of one up there, look. What have I got left? So I've got this fragment of one of those. I'll just put a tiny bit of that up there. Right, so that's all of the hexagons put in place. The next thing I'm going to do is show you how to do the stitching. So this embroidery thread that I'm using is 6 strand, so I'm going to separate it out and just use 2 strands at a time. Okay, so there's my 2 strands, and I'm just going to thread my needle and then put a knot into the end of my thread. Okay, so then I've got this piece of foam. It was something that came in some packaging with an iPhone. It's the sort of protector, but it's nice and spongy. So I'm going to stick that behind my piece of card, and then I'm going to just punch holes. So I'm doing it just in from the edge of each hexagon, and I'm going to do 3 holes per side. And I'm going to do it on, so I've done it on that one, and I'm going to do it on the neighbouring side. So these are going to be the guide holes for stitching. It's much easier to do your holes first and then stitch through. So we're going to go in from the back and then down the hole opposite. In from the back. So you can see that I've stitched those 2 patches together. So I'm going to carry on. I'm going to go around and put holes on each side of each hexagon that has another hexagon neighbouring up to it, and then continue stitching through. So I've finished stitching all of my hexagons around all of the edges that are bordering onto another hexagon, and the back, every time I sort of came to the end of a piece of cotton, I've stuck the end down with some sellotape. So now I'm going to put a piece of paper on the back of that that's going to hide all of those ends and stop them coming undone. So I've got plenty of this one left, and it's big enough to cover, so I'm going to use that one. So I'm just going to, using the tag as a template, cut out a piece of paper the same size as the template. So I'm now going to glue that onto the back. I'm just making sure the corners are lined up. Give a good press. Okay, so that's neatly covered up all of those threads at the back. I'm just going to trim off any bits that seem to be sort of sticking out past the front. There we go. So last thing to do is just make the hole for the string. And cut off a piece of string. You could use some of the cottons that you've used if you wanted to tag a string in the same colour. So fold it in half, through the holes and back through the loop. There we go. So there we have our patchwork quilt tag. I hope you enjoyed watching that, and I hope you have fun making one. Thank you.